Hello, everyone, and welcome into another X's and Dogs podcast. Today, we have a pretty exciting show for you guys in that we are doing the first edition of the 2026 mock draft for the X's and Dogs. Now, I talked about it on my Twitter page earlier this morning, and if you don't follow me, go follow me on there. I have a bunch of much more frequent, up-to-date Browns news, kind of my reaction to what's going on, available there. But I talked about it there that this is the first week where I really feel comfortable, doing a mock draft for the Cleveland Browns. And there's a couple of reasons for that. First off, the regular college football season just came to a conclusion. So for a lot of players, the season is over, but for, also a good collection of players, there is also the college football playoffs to be played. Now, I just think that up until this point, there wasn't enough information out on these guys, and there was still a remainder of the season to be played. And additionally, I think we now have a pretty accurate view of kind of where the NFL draft order is going to shake out. Now, we still don't have the exact details of, who's going to get the first pick, the second pick, the third pick, but I think we have a good idea of who will more than likely be in those spots, especially as we get to the point in the season where none of these teams have a real interest in going out and winning football games because they all want to maximize their chances at getting a higher draft pick. Now, I know it's not as simple as that. The players always try to win games, and I agree with that, but these are teams that, all of the teams in the top five right now, more than likely have more interest in losing the game than winning it. And that's just the reality of the situation. So I just think this on December 16th, now really I could have made this yesterday, but I wanted to wait till today because I wanted to talk about the quarterback situation yesterday. But I think this week is the first week where there truly is enough information to give you guys a kind of bare bones mock draft. And what I mean by bare bones is what I also talked about in my tweet earlier today, that in this mock draft today, I want to focus particularly on the positions that I choose. Rather than getting into the nitty gritty and kind of arguing about the players that I chose in today's draft, I want to shift your guys' attention to the positions. Now, if you guys disagree with the specific position that I choose, or the more appropriately the position group that I choose, then feel free to let me know in the comments. Let me know you disagree with that. That's fine. That's what this one's about. But to me, this one is less about the player itself, because there still is more information to be gathered on all of these players, whether that be the college football playoffs, the Senior Bowl, the East-West Bowl, the NFL draft combine itself. We still have, so much left of the evaluation process as it pertains to these draft prospects. So getting bogged down on the players themselves doesn't make a lot of sense to me at this point. Now, I think that's pretty well known across, Browns fans and NFL fans, but I just wanted to give that kind of preface to today's mock draft, because it really is an important way to look at the way I went about drafting and making this mock draft for you guys today. Now, I also want to give you a very quick timeline into how I intend to do mock drafts this offseason leading up to the 2026 draft. Now, my plan is to do 5 mock drafts, starting with the one today. There will additionally be one probably a week before the end of the regular season in the NFL. At that point, the college football playoffs will be winding down. We'll have a really good idea of who is going to enter the NFL draft, although we won't have a picture perfect or crystal clear view of that just yet, but we'll have a much better idea. We'll also have a couple more weeks of NFL games to have a better idea as far as where the draft order is going to be. Then following that one, we'll have a third one immediately after the regular season, in which case we'll know exactly where the Browns their top picks at, and all the remainder of their own picks in this draft are located. And then the fourth one will be after the playoffs. Now, this one is when we'll have the actual full view of the players who declared, the exact draft order, where the Browns are going to be picking, not only in that first pick, but also in that Jags pick. And that one will be the first one where we'll have the full picture available to us. Then we'll have the last one, which will be right before the actual NFL draft, where we'll have all the information from the draft combine, the Senior Bowl, East-West Shrine Bowl, like all of these events that give you more information into these prospects, as well as kind of the rumors floated by the in touch guys like Todd McShay, Dane Brugler, and kind of these reporters who are in the know on this stuff. And really give us a good view into how, these teams view these players. So that's a quick introduction into how the mock draft cycle will look here at X's and Dogs. Now, I just want to start with the first mock draft, and I'm going to put it on screen here for you guys. Now, it shouldn't come to a huge surprise for a lot of you who do follow me on Twitter, but if you don't, like I said, definitely follow me there. If you are watching on a podcast platform like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc., definitely recommend maybe checking out my YouTube channel, because you're going to get the video feed here and you're going to have the players on the screen. It's going to be a little bit easier to follow along with, but you definitely will be able to listen to on those podcast platforms as well if you aren't a YouTube user or whatever reason. That being said, let's get started right away here. You guys can see the first pick I went with, Fernando Mendoza. Now, I do want to clarify, PFSN doesn't have, for whatever reason, the PFSN mock drafts love to have Dante Moore selected before Fernando Mendoza. Now, in my opinion, that's not very likely. So, again, the more important thing is the position that I chose. This could be Fernando Mendoza. It could be Dante Moore. To me, those are really the only two options here. But the crucial thing to take away from this is that I believe the Browns will take a quarterback with that top pick. I think that they'll lose out. We play the Steelers, the Bills, and the Bengals. So unless you think we're going to be able to steal one of those games, which is just highly unlikely in my opinion, the way this team and this coaching staff is performing, unless you think we're going to win one of those games, we will more than likely have the third or the second pick. And that's going to get us in a position to where we are able to get one of these quarterbacks either without making a trade or, making a more affordable trade than other teams, with one of those squads, as could be the Giants, could be the Titans, that are ahead of us but don't need a quarterback. And I talked about it in yesterday's podcast where I went more in depth into the quarterback position, but I believe there's going to be a whole new regime here in Cleveland. And more than likely, if there is, they're going to want the chance to draft their own quarterback who they believe in. And I think that's going to be probably the reason they get the job here and they want the job here, because they have the opportunity and the ability and the draft capital to get that quarterback. So knowing that, that's kind of where my mind is at. Now, I know a lot of you are going to kill me in the comments and let me know how you think Shedeur can be the answer for this team long term. And I'm not saying, when I make this prediction, I'm not saying that Shedeur can't be a good NFL quarterback, but I just think the cards aren't going to play out. More than likely, the cards are going to play out in a way that Shedeur will need to find success at another team, and that's okay. I think Browns fans need to become comfortable with that. Shedeur fans need to become comfortable with that. There's constant complaints about the Browns organization within that fan base. So maybe it's just best for everyone for Shedeur to go on somewhere else and try to find some success in the league. I think that's the most likely scenario for this team and maybe the best situation for Shedeur. So that's my kind of rationale with the first pick. I have put myself fully on board and kind of fully expecting until proven otherwise that this team is going to draft a quarterback with that top pick because it will be high enough. It's really as simple as that. They will have the opportunity to do it, and I believe they will do it. Again, it could be Mendoza, it could be Dante Moore. We can have the argument between those two and who's better. Later on down the line, whenever we have much more information, we have the playoffs to go from, we have the combine, we see them on their pro days. Like, there's just so much more information to get on these guys, but I think both of them are very promising, and that's all we need for now. So that kind of wraps up the first pick. Obviously, we know what Mendoza has to offer. We know Big Ten championship, just nails performances over and over again this season. Has his flaws for sure. He's not perfect, but definitely a really good prospect. So that's the first pick. I want to move on to the next pick, which on this mock, it shows pick 28. We really have no idea where that pick's going to be because the Jags could lose in the first round of the playoffs, and that could be like a low 20s pick. To me, though, there's really only two positions that I would find acceptable to draft in that spot. I would love to get a wide receiver there. And I'd be equally okay with getting a tackle. So for me, the 28 pick and the 38 pick here really do just kind of rotate with one another. Like, whichever one you get at that 28 spot, you need to get the other one at the 38 spot and vice versa, because it really just comes down to who you think provides the most value at that later first round pick spot. So the Jags pick. In this draft, Denzel Boston did slide to 28. I think that Denzel Boston is clearly the third best receiver in this draft behind Jordan Tyson and Carnell Tate. Now I have Denzel Boston kind of as a comparison to like a Michael Pittman in the league. So, maybe a more high end version of that would be like a Drake London, but I think Drake London was a little bit better of a prospect, coming out more polished, a little bit better athletically, in especially in the speed category. So I think Michael Pittman is the most accurate NFL comp for Denzel Boston, but Denzel was a very physical wide receiver for Washington. He's a 6'3", 6'4" guy. I believe he's like 210, has a lot of muscle, great frame. He can go up and catch the ball, a physical wide receiver. So I think the Michael Pittman comp makes a lot of sense. Now, he's not going to be the most twitchy guy in the world, so he's not going to go out there and be a fantastic route runner and be a speed guy, but he definitely is a guy who you can rely on and has the frame to be a wide receiver one for a football team, which is something that, the Browns haven't had for a long time. Apart from Cedric Tillman, we really don't have a guy who has a frame like Denzel. So I'm a big Denzel Boston fan, specifically for the Browns in this draft. And I think if he's there in that later first round pick, that's great value to go out there and get a potential receiver who has wide receiver one upside, in my opinion. Now, again, if there is a tackle available here that you think, or the Browns think, is a more value pick at that spot than Denzel Boston, by all means, I can get on board with taking that player there. For this specific mock draft, I went with Denzel Boston because I think prospect-wise at this point, he provides more value than the tackles that were available there. Like Proctor, really the only tackle that was available that I was considering was Proctor out of Alabama in this spot. And I just think Denzel is a better wide receiver and has less flop potential than Proctor does. Like, I think Proctor has maybe a higher upside than Denzel Boston. Like, he could be a really good tackle in the league because he's super athletic. But, with these Alabama tackles, we see them come into the league and just struggle sometimes. So there is just a reality to that situation where he could have a floor that is a risk. And I don't know that the Browns should gamble with that. So that kind of leads into the next pick, that this 38 pick here. And now the thing with Austin Seereveld is he's a very athletic player. He's a very athletic tackle. Now, a lot of people say that he's a guy who will more than likely switch. I don't want to say more than likely. Potentially switch to guard in the NFL. I will say the same thing was said about Will Campbell, and of course we all know he has not done that for the Patriots. He's been very productive for them, a very good player for them. He's a guy who people said had not long enough arms to be a tackle in the NFL, and he's proven them all wrong. The thing with this year's tackle class overall, and it's a very common occurrence throughout the whole entire class, is that kind of that same situation where a lot of the draft pros are saying that these guys are better fit to be guards in the NFL, and they're either not tall enough, not long enough, not athletic enough to be a tackle. That's not to say that that's guaranteed, because Seereveld has been a good tackle for Ohio State. He's only played left tackle for a year, with the Buckeyes. And he's been really good for them so far. So knowing that he has the ability, in my opinion, to grow as a player, and if he can get the right offensive line coach in the right system, I think he has a ceiling, because he's an athletic dude. He's a tall dude. And the thing is he's long too. Like, he has the physical traits to potentially be a tackle in the league. So that's why I went Seereveld here over the other tackles that were available, who I just think have maybe a little bit lower upside with a high second round pick here. Now, if Seereveld comes to the Browns and ends up being a guard and is really good, that's fine too. Like, that's why I think he's a pretty valuable pick here in this spot, because if he does have to play guard, we need guards. Like, we don't have any good guards either. So I think best case, he's able to play tackle for us. In worst case, he just is a good guard for let's say we get a really good, left guard for the next 10 years. I think that's a perfectly fine pick at, in the second round here. So that's kind of my takeaway. If you think this is again, one of those scenarios where, like, if you find another tackle more appealing in this spot, by all means, I will have that conversation with you, and I think, definitely could be the case. You never know. It's too early to say with these guys, but it's just about the process here, and the process for me is quarterback, wide receiver, tackle. That needs to be the top three. Quarterback is obviously going to be the first, and then the next two can go whatever order with whatever players you want. You name it. You give a good argument for it. I'm willing to hear all of you guys out on whatever your preferences are. These are just the guys that I thought, fit the Browns the most at this point. Moving on to the third round pick here. This one will likely be in the high 60s for the Browns. I went with Caleb Tiernan here, the Northwestern tackle. Now, Caleb's an old prospect. I want to say he's 23. Let me double check. I think he's played at Northwestern, I believe, for a few years. He's 22. So, yeah, he's an older guy. And he has a lot of college experience, but he's a huge dude. He's 6'7". He's not the longest, which I'll get to, but he's athletic, big. He's a swing tackle. So for Northwestern, he played left and right tackle, which I think is useful for the Browns, because their line is in so much shambles that they really they just need people to go out there and play for them. They need both a left tackle and a right tackle at this point. And I think the more bodies they can get in there who have the ability to maybe be a flexible player for them, the better. And similarly, like I said with Seereveld, like if Caleb Tiernan comes in and is able to be that swing tackle option for them for the next 5 to 10 years, that's a great pick in the third round. You're probably not getting a top tier tackle in the third round. Like, these guys are just too sought after. So, like, if you're able to get a swing player who provides value for you in the third round on that offensive line, that's a hit for me. And the thing with the third round pick for me in this particular mock is that I think it just needs to be another offensive lineman. I think you have to revisit that position group as a whole after the first three picks. The first three early picks that we have, you have to go back, double dip in the offensive line, in my opinion. Now, if you think a better value with like a center or a guard is there, I would 100% hear you out on that one as well. So similar situation, but I think Caleb Tiernan has the ability and kind of the frame to be a pretty good tackle in the league, and he needs to work on some things and polish some things up for sure. That's why he's a third round pick here, but I think he's a pretty good prospect, and I think he'll definitely be available for us there in the third round. All right, now moving on to the last pick that I made here. This is where I think it's a little bit more open in my eyes as far as like what position you could pick, what player you could pick. I think once we get to the fourth round here, it's really just finding the best value. Now, I am a really big Max Clare fan. I think he is, one of the better tight ends in this class. It's not the best tight end class, but I think Max Clare is probably the best receiving tight end. He's been really good for Ohio State, albeit he's not a great pass blocker. He's okay in the run. He'll be able to get. I think he'll be able to get the job done at the NFL level in the run game. You're never going to rely on him to be a pass blocking tight end for you. But the bigger point here and the bigger question mark is David Njoku. If you do re-sign David Njoku, who is going to have a big cap hit for you regardless of if he plays or not. If you are able to re-sign him, you're probably not taking Max Clare here with Harold Fannin playing the way he is. But if we do move off of David Njoku, I think we'll probably revisit that position again this draft. And I think the fourth round is kind of that sweet spot for tight ends where, especially this year, where there's not kind of that top end talent that we saw last year, with Loveland, Warren, kind of those guys that went off the board in like the first round last year. We don't have that in this draft. So I think the fourth round is kind of that sweet spot where you're going to be able to get value there. And that's why I went with Max Clare. I'm willing to hear you guys out on other options here. And pretty much most positions, the only position that there's a few positions that I would not entertain here. I don't think I would go D tackle. I don't think I would go defensive end. You could definitely go safety. I don't think I would go linebacker here. So like safety, you could even go cornerback because, I think we've kind of all seen now that we don't have enough depth at that position. So you could definitely go cornerback. You could even go back to another wide receiver here if you like one of those guys a lot in this spot. But I think Max Clare kind of, fits that pass catcher role and will be able to provide the offense a spark in the passing game for sure. So fourth round pick is kind of up in the air. Just you kind of name your preference and go from there. But I think a tight end is a real possibility in that pick. And that wraps up the first mock draft here. Now, again, this one is about positions. It's about picking the right positions, not necessarily the players. If we get Fernando Mendoza with the 4th overall pick, I think we'll all be pretty ecstatic with that because there's a really good chance he's going to go number 1 overall. So, it's about getting the right positions in this one, and then going from there. As we get in for more information, like I said, we can have more of an argument about these specific players and who you think is the best prospect to pick at the particular spot. Now, that wraps up today's mock podcast for you guys. Sorry as my intro rolls again there, but if you did enjoy today's podcast, go ahead, leave a like. Let me know, where's your first couple mocks landing? Who are the prospects you really like in some of these picks? I'm super intrigued to hear what you guys have to say about kind of the 2026 mock, because it is, or the 2026 draft, because it is a very important one for this football team, and it's one that this front office, regardless of who it is, if it's the current regime or a new regime, they need to hit it. They need to hit this draft. They need to be effective in it. And so hopefully we're all able to get ourselves in a position where, you know, we're confident with our picks. And that's kind of the process we're starting here today. All that said, hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you did, hit the like button. I will see you all very soon. Got more content coming out this week. I have a fun topic coming out on Friday for you guys, another bonus pod that I won't spoil yet, but make sure you guys tune in for that. Have a great